Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Mike Welsh. Mike is the Chief Creative Officer at Mobiquity, leading a team of experienced architects, experienced designers, and conversational designers to deliver engaging and compelling solutions in collaboration with engineers who bring these solutions to life. He has been doing this for over 27 years, having joined Mobiquity near its beginning. Mike notes that what originally drew him to this role is the ability to transform experiences for companies and their customers. What keeps him and the team engaged is the opportunity to find out what truly transforms human experience and then brings it to life. He's a firm believer in the power of a team and its ability to create impact derived from insights. Mike's time is spent with clients and teams, including working within creative, business, and technology fields, bringing many skills to the table, including experience strategy, experience design, product strategy, and product design. His industry knowledge within these functions spans healthcare, retail, e-commerce, and financial services. And he has lectured on these topics at the University of Pennsylvania, Drexel University, Moore College of Art and Design, and various conferences. So without further delay, welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, Mike, could you tell us a little bit about your journey, how it is that you got into experience strategy and experience design? Tell us a little bit about that journey over the 27 years, how it got you to where you are today.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I know these podcasts probably have to be relatively short, but I went to Drexel University. I got my degree in graphic design and a sort of minor in sociology. And after graduating, I started out a little shop in Manayunk, which is a town just outside of Philadelphia, and got to work on some interesting projects and got started and thought, wow, this is actually exactly what I want to do. But I thought I need to learn about all the pieces that surround the design business, the work that we do, not just making pixels and making things pretty, but how do people think about things? And for those that suffer by what we design, what is it like in their experience? So how can you get into that more directly, more fully, and start to explore that? So I had lots of opportunities and mentors along the way and people that gave me guidance, and sort of stumbled and fumbled through the first 5 or 10 years of my career, and then sort of hit my stride when the .com boom / bust happened. That's when I started to get into these entrepreneurial spaces where it was startup time. So I've probably been 4 of the last 6 jobs or startups. And for me, that was the opportunity to really explore, how do you actually transform? How do you kind of get up that Maslow pyramid to get the unmet need met? And I think a lot of the work that the teams I've been fortunate enough to lead demonstrate that in a lot of different ways. But it's ultimately, can a customer can a user, can a patient have silent utility? You don't need 5-star experiences. What you need is, the design has to sort of become part of an experience that's quietly used by folks, and it just works, right? It just works every day. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been a big portion of the journey leading up to the last 7 years at Mobiquity, of taking customers over probably like 200 or so projects of how do you get somebody to understand their experience enough, give it to you, and then come back with something that gives them sort of a rich, silent utility experience.
All right. Now, when we're in an era now, especially since the global pandemic, where a lot of organizations are definitely looking to transform their experiences digitally. Even if they weren't in a digital space, they're possibly looking at a digital transformation strategy, regardless of the industry that they operate in. Maybe as an expert in user and customer experience design and strategy, could you maybe share with us 2 or 3 things that should be top of mind in making that transition if you're a company?
Sure, that's a good question too. One of the main things that companies that have to approach this sort of new normal, new reality, structural change that's going to be with us for a significant period of time is, first, don't panic. I know that sounds maybe not like a design thing to think about, but if you're a business trying to survive and get on the other side of whatever this is, right? A global pandemic, civil unrest, governmental change, all sorts of things that are happening in everybody's country. The first is to not panic and think about how your business grows in an environment like this. In every depression and recession we've ever had, most of the truly, sustainable businesses are built out of that crucible of collapse. And so if you are one of those businesses, and you could see this with Facebook and Netflix and Spotify, all came out of the Great Recession. Well, we're at another point where there's going to be another set of entrepreneurs and business owners and business people that are going to have opportunities. The second big pitfall, or the second big sort of caution, is you don't have to boil the ocean. You shouldn't have to solve everything at once. It is sort of the Kaizen model of take a little bit each time that you go to make a change in your business and do some analysis, try it. If it doesn't work, learn from it and move on. Mm-hmm. Don't try to do everything at once, like curbside or contactless payments or things like that. There's plumbing and systems that already exist, that are already in the world. How can you adapt these to your business in a simple, straightforward, working with your customer, dealing with your labor way that can also make you able to meet your bottom line, right? Mm-hmm. And then to some extent, the third thing is you have to have grit. So Duckworth wrote all about it, and you have to have passion and perseverance. And you need tons of both to be able to sustain yourself through what is essentially a depression and come out of it with a completely new, streamlined, more efficient, more customer focused than I think you'd ever have in any other time.
All right. So those are definitely valid integrations that we can take into consideration when we're thinking of our digital strategy. Now, a big part, I think, of user design, Mike, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, seeing that you're the expert, is, I think, personalization. And so using whatever platform, whether it's for a bank or for a supermarket or a spa or, whatever, that at the end of the day, mm-hmm. I don't feel like it's generic to everybody, but it's specific to me and what I'm looking for. How can you ensure that you achieve that? Is it by ensuring that you're asking the right questions? Is it maybe from collecting the right kind of customer data? What are some of the things that need to be done on the back end to ensure that the user feels like it's personalized to them?
Yeah. So you're not wrong. And I don't know if I'm the expert, but we all use experiences. Like you use the phone, we're using Skype, we're doing all these things. We're accessing technology and adopting it. I think one of the principal things people have to do if you're trying to personalize is to first understand what the human component is. So for example, the sort of Maslow example I talked about in the beginning was at the bottom of the pyramid, you can just make an app that sits in an app store mm-hmm. and it does a thing and you have to log in. And that could be Uber or it could be Amazon. You get to the next tier and you have to understand what desires exist for a person. What are the desires that people want in an experience? If you understand those, you can create interactions they really want. Mm. And that may be a tier above. So Uber, for example, or House Party, or some of these other experiences that really do get at interactions I actually want in those experiences. And then tier above that is you got to have a fair exchange of value between the human and the system. And so that means that you have to construct these systems so they're built around an audience, not around a technology. Mm-hmm. It's hard for people to understand that when they go to set out and make an app because they're thinking about a technology that's looking for a problem. Mm-hmm. But the reality is you want to make it so that you understand fundamentally what's at stake for that person so that they can have moments of achievement in that fair exchange of value. And I think when you see the 5-star experiences or you think of the apps that you use yourself or think of the kiosk experiences that you've had or the experiences with your television set, any technology interaction you have that you feel is meaningful oftentimes obliquely goes after the unmet need by trying to create a fair exchange of value between a human and a system. Mm-hmm. The last piece of this and sort of the capper is if you understand how audience management works and how you can steer audiences in different ways, it starts with that one-to-one knowledge, that understanding of the human condition. Do you really understand anxiety? The uncertainty and powerlessness that people feel today as they go about their business, put on their masks, wash their hands, do these kinds of things, are going to fundamentally change the way we act as humans. We don't know what it is yet because we're still in the cauldron. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, if you think about that anxiety as an equation for how you can address, the more certain people can feel, the more power they have in a transaction, and that intuitive emotional awareness of the consumer can change the state of anxiety someone experiences when they're trying to interact with a piece of technology. And that's a great way to start your sort of personalization conversation. And then on the technology side, there's a million things out there. AWS, Google, everybody's got tons of widgets that can quote unquote address personalization, but they're all afterthoughts. It's not until you understand that equation, fully and completely, and then you create that exchange, that fair exchange of value between you and someone else.
So the person who is doing the designing, they not just have to think about just selling a product. They have to think about the end user. And as you mentioned, how does the human element connect with the technology aspect to ensure that you're actually trying to meet the unmet needs of the client? Because sometimes I guess the customer doesn't even know what their needs are until it has been met, right?
That's right. And it shows up surprisingly in different ways, right? So the way that you bought the microphone that you're using to do this podcast had a certain set of things. You had some needs. You had to have really good sort of NPR quality audio, and you wanted some, some high quality production after you do this podcast. But the reality is that you want to make sure that the quality of your audio gets to your audiences in exactly the right way. There's sort of a margin that you have. If I understand that, then I'm going to position that microphone in a way that gets you to that end. I'm going to use YouTube influencers. I'm going to use social media. I'm going to have people using the mic mention it. There's a lot of ways that people can do this where they can actually personalize the experience and make it so that you're making the right purchase with the right kinds of information.
Yeah. I think information is so critical, Mike, as you mentioned that. I think sometimes a lot of companies, I know like, for example, in sales, they focus on trying to sell the customer the benefits, like how will it benefit me versus the features, because I think that's where a lot of salespeople go wrong. They're caught up on all of the features that this particular product or service may offer, but maybe some of those features I don't need. I'm not interested, let's say I was buying a car. I'm not interested in the fact that, the RPM can go to whatever number. I'm probably more interested in the softer features. Does it have a dashboard with a podcasting app? Does it have Bluetooth that it will sync with my phone? Because those are things that I actually value and use on a daily basis when I'm driving. And so is to understand who you're serving and what the benefit would be to them. If, for example, you're selling a vehicle to a mom with 3 children versus, a single man, who is a bachelor, clearly your pitch would be a little bit different because she's probably looking for something that will have enough space to accommodate her family if she has to go on a trip or a vacation or just up and down every day to take them to soccer practice and ballet recitals. You want to know that you can travel with them in comfort. And of course, if you have to carry groceries, that, there's enough trunk space to facilitate all of that. So I do think that you really have to focus on the benefits of the product, and the knowledge is critical in getting that information across.
Yep, for sure. I agree with that 100%.
All right. So, Mike, how do you stay motivated every day?
That's a good question. There are days, I will tell you, that we've all been having on lockdown that are difficult. But I think 2 things. I have 3 daughters, and they're teenagers. And they keep me motivated every day because every day it's something. But I think, I'm a big fan of sort of Audible and listening to audiobooks and things like that. And I found this one, it's about the 2-minute mornings. And every morning you fill out a journal, you answer 3 questions. It takes literally 2 minutes. And it has actually been extremely powerful. I thought it was kind of like, oh, whatever, I'll do it. But then after I did it for the 90 days I've been here, it actually starts to turn into a way that you can control your day and have a good day. So that plus a little bit of yoga, plus I run a bit, those kinds of things will give you something to look forward to. But I also think that the work that we get to do for our clients, I used to travel a lot for work. I would travel, 50 weeks a year almost, doing workshops and meeting with clients and doing pitches and things like that. Having to do all of this stuff at home from a sort of, remote space, I've been the most creative, I think. I feel like anyway. I've been able to I've been able to have the most impact I've had since I've been in this job, simply because I haven't had to go to the airport at 3:00 in the morning and get home after midnight. It really does put a tax on creativity. So that motivates me every day, and the fact that hundreds of millions of people use stuff that we've designed every day. That's a huge motivation. It just sort of says, look, you can have somebody asked me one time for a job search that if you had to tell a candidate coming to work for Mobiquity, what's the reason you'd come here? And I think for me, the motivation is if I told you that you could have an outsized impact and that your design could potentially influence saving someone's life, for example, that will change your whole outlook on your whole life, because the thing that you thought you went to art school for, which is designing stuff, actually influences healthcare outcomes, or it helps someone have some moment of fulfillment that they wouldn't have otherwise had unless you designed that thing. That is a excellent motivator to get up and get going.
All right. So those are some good things that you use to get motivated every day. One thing that sparked my interest while you were sharing just now is you spoke about things that kind of don't necessarily energize your creativity, and definitely traveling, those stressful hours getting to the airport and then getting back. I mean, traveling on a whole is a stressful experience, really. But one of the things I wanted to know from you was, since you've been home, you said, for the past 90 days, and you've definitely been able to be more creative, could you share with us maybe one personal win that you think working from home has had an impact on your client success? Like just one thing that you've been doing differently that has had a greater impact on how you're able to show up for your client.
Yeah. So the one big thing is, a long time ago, I was told by one of my creative bosses that I wasn't that good of a storyteller. And that was a pretty big, little bit of a punch in the gut kind of thing. And sometimes, that's the truth, right? You have stuff to work on, and sometimes people just don't know how to deliver that message, nicely, I guess. But it was true. And so what happened was, I made that my sort of like, okay, that is going to fuel my hate fire, right? That is going to make me sort of motivated to be the best storyteller I could possibly be, bar none. And so every day I wake up in the morning, and that for me has been the thing that's changed the most. Not only my own storytelling is getting better, and my practice of doing that is getting better, and the techniques that we use to do it remotely is getting better, but it's actually affecting my teams. So my whole design team is getting better at storytelling and getting more efficient at making these messages meaningful. And I think that that's been a big thing for me anyway, as a check the box, you're making some progress.
Ah, very good. All right. So that's definitely had an impact on you, because I think it's so important for our listeners to realize that even though we're working from home, we can still put out even better work than we were putting out when we were actually, in a face-to-face environment, or just doing the things that we're accustomed to doing. Human beings generally don't like change, and they put up a lot of resistance to change. And I can imagine for an employee who is accustomed to face-to-face interaction, that up and down, busy kind of activity every day, staying home, over and over every day, I guess at the beginning it did seem like a nice thing to kind of get a break from the everyday activities. But after doing it over an extended period of time, and now even hearing that this thing is going to continue into 2021, I was just reading on LinkedIn last night that Google is going to extend their work from home to the end of 2021. And I mean, I don't see why it is that it can't be a part of our permanent way of operating, because if you can literally pull out opportunities out of it, and you're able to see productivity increase, you're able to see people grow, you're able to see people develop, and your customers are being satisfied even before, like if you can find some measurement metric system to identify the level of satisfaction post-COVID versus pre-COVID with the same people working but under different conditions, and you're able to prove that it's a better experience, I don't see why we would discontinue what we're doing if it's working better.
Yeah. And so sort of fun fact is, the world isn't going to get back to normal until 2023, 24. So I hate to break it to you, but if you talk to epidemiologists around the world and virologists, they'll all say, look, there is a normalcy bias and a cognitive bias that people have for what's happening to them. And some people have been tremendously negatively impacted, right? Loss of their livelihoods, loss of their businesses, spouses out of work, people, this has super real world. So we're all going to go through a PTSD event. Think of it that way.
Yeah.
What you can hope for is that there can be opportunities for people to find a way to express themselves, So the Maslow that we do for our clients is the same that we do for ourselves. If I can have moments of achievement in my job, in my life, in my work, that's great. But if I can help others do the same thing, the force multiplication that comes along with that is staggering. The amount of impact that you can have. If I were to say to my team, hey, look, one of my teammates had to do a presentation for a client. She didn't want me on the call. She just wanted me to coach her through it. And she said to me afterwards, because we went back and forth about one of the slides, I said, look, I don't think you should put that on there, but what do I know? And afterwards she said, I kept the slide in despite your, not wanting me to, which I said to her, it's fine. You can do what you want. But, she had to own the story. And she came back afterwards. The client was super excited. She did a fantastic job.
Wow.
And as a result, she said, look, I really appreciate all your coaching and everything. And I kept the slide in, like I said, but a lot of the points that you made ended up in my talk track. And for that, I'm grateful. And she said, at some point, you got to let us spread our wings, boss. And so I think that, and I absolutely I'm humble enough to know that I'm only good at a very small number of things. The things that I'm terrible at is an extensively long list. And I imagine others have the same sort of imposter syndrome and things like that. So if you can have focus enough to help somebody else get through this thing and help them have a moment of achievement, it can change that person's impact on the world that they live in.
Yeah.
And so there is a little bit of a multiplication effect of being able to, kind of help your team, get through the things that they're struggling with so they can influence others. And then it just becomes this self-fulfilling kind of thing.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's an excellent story. All right. Okay, Mike, can you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
This is going to sound terrible. I'll give you one and then maybe a half of another. I think the one that I really couldn't live without is the Notes app for my iPad. Now, I wouldn't have said that to you in January, maybe, but myself and my Apple Pencil and my iPad, when I start doing meetings, and this is going to be one of these storytelling things, is that the ability to sketch during a shared meeting, like you're on Zoom or on Teams or whatever, the minute you start drawing on the screen, you have the Bob Ross effect, which is sort of there's a happy tree and you sort of get this soothing feeling of someone drawing a tree in a landscape. That technically has been, my experience has been that is actually something that is super valuable to our customers and our teammates. If they can sort of see the whiteboard, the electronic whiteboard effect happening, they oftentimes are more engaged in the meetings that they're in. They don't want to see more PowerPoints or keynotes. They feel like they're actively doing something, and I'm drawing what they're saying. So I'm literally sketching out while we're going. Across my own internal teams and with external clients have said in feedback that this was a much more engaged meeting, and I felt like we accomplished a lot more because we actually can see a physical result as opposed to a set of slides that I had to spend all week preparing. So for me, the ability to draw live in a shared environment with someone or some people has been a godsend for not being physically present. Because you don't get physical cueing, verbal cueing, you barely get audio cueing. So you need some other physical apparature to be able to have an interaction with someone. Yeah. And the Notes app has been fantastic.
Excellent. That very dynamic tool. Apple has come a very far way with that application.
And you can there's other apps out there that do it, but the Notes one is super simple and it can be shared with others and stuff. So it's my default.
Okay. Now, can you share with us maybe one or two books that have had the biggest impact on you? It could be a book you read recently or something you read a very long time ago, but it still had a great impact on you to this day.
Okay. So I'll give you two books. Now, if you would talk to the team, they would say, oh my God, that's the question for you. Because in my presentations with clients, I have a thing called the book slide, and you can find it on my website. I go through a whole thing about all the books I read. And so one book that's affected my whole career, my whole life is the Tao Te Ching. You can find a version of the Tao Te Ching in lots of translations. It's an ancient philosophy book. And it has spawned lots of different sort of, the Taoist religion itself and, Zen Buddhism came from it. Like there's a lot of things that came after. But the Tao Te Ching has been a book that I've been reading over and over again, then audiobooking, listening to it over and over again for the last 27 years. And it's fundamentally changed my entire outlook on my entire life. Now,
could you spell that, please?
Yep. Tao, pronounced Tao. Te, pronounced day, and Ching, which is Ching.
Ah, I'm so glad you spelled that because it sounded like a D. So I made sure to
Yeah,
ask you.
yeah. The other book, and I just finished this book, which I think everyone should read this book. It is so fascinating. It's the biography of Frederick Douglass. So it's a long listen on Audible. It's like 40 hours or so. So I ran a lot of miles listening to it. But the fact that it's so long, it fundamentally changes it gives you insight into a person that you would never otherwise have. And then it allows you to draw your own conclusions. The way the book's written, it's fascinating. It takes his life from when he was a child in Baltimore all the way through to the end. And you see like you always think about these caricatures of people that you learn about in school, but until you actually get into the detail and you start to see how, they're not perfect. These people, everybody wants everybody to be binary. They're not binary. There's a gray scale of humanity that this man operated with. And you just think about how tough your day is. You can take any 6 chapters out of that book and feel 1,000 times better about what you have to do each day. And it's brilliantly written. It talks about almost like when Hamilton was like writing all the time, doing the Federalist Papers. He wrote like 50 some odd Federalist Papers. Everybody else did a fraction. This guy was writing constantly. Failed newspapers, started another one, writing constantly. The sort of assuasion sort of principles, then moving into nonviolent stuff, and then moving through freeing himself from slavery and traveling abroad and becoming a writer and a sort of a speaker on the circuit. You really do get a sense that one person could change the world. And I found the book to be just super fantastic. And Life and Times is also his own writings, which I think are also good. But you get to see a full picture of a human, which I thought was amazing. So Tao Te Ching, Frederick Douglass. I know it's a sort of, no pun intended, bookends of experience, but it was amazing.
Good. And the second one, it was like a biography, yes?
It was a biography.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So we'll have the links to both those books in the show notes of this episode. So any of our listeners who would like to tap into those philosophical and life learning lessons can definitely listen to or read for those persons who actually want to purchase a physical book and turn the pages. All right, Mike, can you share with us what one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about, either something that you're working on to develop yourself or your people?
Yeah, so the one about my people is we do we do in-person training. So one of my team, that same teammate I described the story about, the slide that she included that I didn't want her to, she came to me once and said, hey, I'm having trouble being confident about how I'm presenting myself and what I'm talking about in the work. And I'd like to be more confident about it. And it seems like my peers in other jobs and other companies have this level of confidence. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, let's figure out a way to get everybody's, let's get everybody's confidence level up or reduce their imposter syndrome. So we brought in an outside firm to give us training every 6 months or so. They'll do 2 classes on, one is like how to do UX journey maps, and others how to do usability or heuristic evaluations, expert reviews, how to present UX, storytelling for UX. Getting this team certified in each of these areas by a sort of globally known company started to build up this confidence level that you would start to see in meetings with clients. So that, from a rewarding standpoint, has been amazing to watch a team of pretty experienced professionals up their games, be more confident about their work, sort of stand on their own 2 feet. My biggest thing I tell my team all the time is I would love if we had a meeting with a client and you're doing a presentation and I could just sit in the back. Being the chief creative officer isn't super easy. There's lots of things about it that are hard, but the most proud moments you can have, or the most rewarding moments you can have, is when you see your team have these moments of achievement for themselves.
Yeah.
Like they get up, they do their work, and the clients are like, people clapping at the end of a meeting. Come on. That's amazing.
Yeah. That's
for myself
fantastic.
Personally, my parents both passed away in the last 3 years. My mother passed away in February, just before lockdown.
Oh no, my sincerest condolences.
No, thank you. But my mother probably kept me from traveling and in some ways protected me probably from catching this COVID thing.
Well, everything
So
in life happens for a reason.
yeah. And so as a result of that, I sort of said, all right, from now on, I'm going to try to live every day like it's my last. And I got a teardrop trailer, and I'm going to tow it across the United States, and I'm going to do the 25 top national parks in the United States. I travel all over the world and have been around the world a bunch of times, but it's mostly for work, so it's not like I'm vacationing in places. I'm just going into a conference room. But I'm going to take the camper and just go, and it's like a small teardrop, sleeps one person, and I'm just going to go drag that across the United States and try to see all these wonders that I haven't seen. So I'm a big camping fan. So
That's good. That sounds pretty exciting. It's amazing the amount of things that you can do. And I think I was reading that recently. Actually, it was on an Instagram story. A company had asked one of those polling questions, what's the one thing you've learned since COVID? And someone wrote that time is so precious and you really shouldn't take any day for granted. That's what they've learned since COVID. And I guess it's because we have so much time to sit still and look at what is really happening. I mean, look at what happened yesterday in Beirut. I mean, it's just...
Oh my gosh, yeah. So terrible.
we have to be grateful for even the things that we think is standard. Breathing, waking up every day, the sun is shining. Just having the ability to live and just, function. The things that we take for granted that we believe must happen, they don't must happen. And so I think at the end of the day, if we all approach life, as you said, like it's your last, you'll really live a more fulfilling life.
For sure. Most people live their lives on the gross level. Most people, and you'll see that in the Tao Te Ching, right?
Yeah.
Most people live their lives on a level that doesn't let them get below the surface of their own existence. And that has been broken through for a lot of people in this sort of lockdown. I mean, it's been difficult. Isolation, depression, all these things are happening. However, on the other side, the bright spot is you can really see people start to get below the surface. They're not just constantly consuming. They're not just sort of keeping themselves distracted or anesthetized from what's actually happening in their own lives. And that's been interesting to see. It's impacted me as well.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So Mike, we had our listeners engage with you in this podcast, and they're thinking to themselves, I would like to follow Mike. I'd like to hang out where Mike is hanging out. I want to see what he's doing, what he's up to. Where can they find you online?
So I'm on sort of all the socials. So Twitter, Facebook, not really on Facebook that much, but LinkedIn for sure. Instagram is where I spend a lot of my time. So if I'm doing this travel across the United States, I'm going to be vlogging and posting a lot of stuff. But I think those are the main ones. I think the other piece of it is I have my own website where I put up some of the stuff I just talked to you about in terms of the books.
Right.
I have those up there, and each of the books I do we have a book club thing at work. So I do little mini book reports, and so if you go to mwelsh.com, you can see some of the stuff that I'm into and things that I'm writing about.
Okay. Sure. And your handles on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter are Mike Welsh?
Mike S. Welsh.
Mike S. Welsh.
So MIKS, yep. All are the same. So all of them are, and all the ones that you would expect. So Snapchat, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
All right. Okay. So we'll also have those handles in the show notes of this episode. Okay. So before we wrap the interview up, Mike, we always like to ask our guests, what's one quote or saying that during times of adversity or challenge or any obstacle that you may be facing in your life, you'll tend to revert to kind of help you to stay on track or just, keep going? Do you have one of those?
Yeah. So it's sort of a hashtag that I've been doing since my father passed away. So a long time ago, I came to my dad and I had a problem. I said, Dad, this thing's happening in my life. What am I doing? What do I do about it? And his advice to me was, you need to keep your head down and you need to keep moving, because if you stand still, everything will take you down. Those things will just eat you alive. So the idea is that you got to keep your head down. You got to keep moving. And that passion and perseverance thing, the grit that you need to have, you need to get it. You're not born with it. You have to earn that going through these experiences, and you just have to keep moving.
All right. That's some good piece of advice there.
All
right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to hop on this podcast with us today. and share all of these great nuggets about, experience design and strategy and, philosophy around living a better life and, growing your team to the point where they're maximizing on their own potential and they're growing and developing at a level that you're, as a leader, you're so proud of, that, it really makes a difference in terms of the value that you're adding to their lives as well as the value that they're adding to the organization. So we really appreciate all the great things you shared with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really good to I don't get asked a lot of these questions very often on podcasts, so this is refreshing. I appreciate it.
Oh, nice. Very good. So if you'd like to join our private Facebook group, it's Navigating the Customer Experience Community, and feel free to follow us on Navigating CX on Twitter. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. Thank you for listening to Navigating the Customer Experience. If you'd like to connect with us even more, please feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And of course, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Navigating CX. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.